As you can see, I actually did the marks on the inside. These are just morphed, so I know which angle to have the needle at when I'm actually doing the piercing. And then we're going to keep everything parallel with the head so we can actually lay down his ear. I like to open the rings this way so it gets a better insertion that way, as opposed to twisting it and having less of an area to actually grab it with. This is the pouch method I'm using here. Alright, just go ahead and sit up straight. Look forward. And go ahead and give me a big deep breath in and out. Does it? Get rid of this needle. Perfect. I like to go with the natural folds that the ear has. This flat part on some people is very prominent and sticks out, so connecting it isn't always going to be a viable option. Your main thing to look at is how far this ridge is pronounced, and then see where you're going to pierce along. And it looks on him with the natural folds on his ear. This is again angles for the inside. So, making sure it's going to be away from everything. Then you'll be piercing through there, coming out through here, avoiding that ridge, going along with the proper bends and folds of the ear to make it have a very good chance for healing with the least amount of complications possible. A drape sheet is applied. Bending the ear slightly, I am able to assure myself the natural folding points of the ear, which is where I will be placing the piercing. Using my thumb and forefinger, I brace the tissue, and with the back of the needle, I apply pressure to the tissue to assure myself of the angle and location of the piercing. When ready, keeping bracing hand in place, I turn the needle around and pierce on the client's exhale. Using jewelry that unscrews on both sides, I'm able to insert the barbell, leaving the other side primed and ready for insertion into the other side once the piercing is done. For the other side, the process is repeated. Using bracing hand, I use the back of the needle to assure myself of the angle and placement of piercing. With my bracing hand staying in place, I turn the needle around and pierce during the client's exhale. I never move my bracing hand. Inserting jewelry and applying beads, piercing is complete.
I got the needle that I bend with my fingers. I'll show how I bend it before, like how I bend it. Then have the little end. Same with the O-ring. That goes in my pinky. Barbell goes right down my fingers. Just close your eyes. Just relax. Breathe nice and slowly. It's gonna be nice and easy, really smooth, really quick. Now you're gonna feel a little bit of alright, just give me a nice deep breath in. Nice and slowly out. Another one. Really slowly out. Perfect. That was horrible.
That wasn't bad. No. It's never as bad as you expect it to be. I said it's never as bad as you expect it to be.
Now it can't hurt at all.
Well, all the painful stuff's done.
Hang on the pinky.
Not at all.
Bracing the tissue with my thumb and forefinger of my left hand, and with a slightly bent needle in my right, I'm able to pierce the tragus by applying a little bit of pressure behind it. Here, you see me with the back of the needle do a mock dry run of the piercing to create some muscle memory, as well as familiarize myself with the angle and placement of the piercing. Once ready, bracing hand in place, I flip the needle over, and here you can see the angle of the needle in the back of my hand. I brace the tissue, I pierce. Even though it's hard to see, you see the result of my actions. If the tragus moves during piercing, it wasn't braced properly. Then, opening ring and inserting, piercing is complete. Okay.
Should I get a copy of this?
Here Ruben employs almost the same technique I used earlier, except in reverse, inside out. Bracing the tissue with his left hand, with his thumb and forefinger giving some room to accept the needle, he pierces. He utilizes a 3-inch needle here to give him some extra grip and needle control for the execution of the piercing. With the use of a pin coupling already attached, he is able to insert the jewelry in one motion. Attaching gem, piercing is complete. First, a drape sheet is applied. Bracing the tissue on one side, I do a dry run of the actual piercing with the back of the needle to see the angles I will need to employ. I also am able to push on the tissue to see how hard the tissue is and to see how much force I will need to exert in order to pierce the tissue. When ready, keeping the bracing hand in place, I flip needle over, tell the client to take a deep breath in, exhale, I pierce. Jewelry is inserted with the aid of a pin coupling. The bead is then attached and piercing is complete. Alright. Looking for a good flat spot here. Keeping this parallel with the face. Marking implement. And then one line to see the angle. I'll come around this way. And see how it works in relation to go around, pan around. Bam. With my positioning for this piercing, I'm trying to find a way to brace the tissue I will be piercing. With my thumb and forefinger, I brace the front part of the conch, noticing where the gap between my fingers is. Then, I place the needle exactly there on the back. Paying attention to the angle, I line everything up. When ready, I pierce. Insert jewelry with the use of a pin coupling. Add gem, and piercing is complete. First, a drape sheet is applied. Because of the nooks and crannies in the ear and the differences in size and anatomy in people, we suggest trying different bracing techniques until one feels right for you. Sometimes, different needle bends need to be utilized as well. Here we see the piercer trying to choose a bracing technique that feels right to him. Once bracing technique and needle bend are chosen, the piercing can then be executed. I begin by applying a drape sheet over the face, exposing only the nose. Then, I pinch the nostril to check for thickness as well as bendability. I then begin to bend the nostril jewelry. I like to bend it into a nice L so it will sit back comfortably in any angle during the healing. The back part of the L fits back into the nasal cavity so it doesn't fall out. Once the jewelry is ready, I then grab the nostril with my thumb and forefinger and tweak the nostril slightly. Keeping the needle parallel with the septum, I then pierce straight down. I use the straight part of the nostril jewelry to push the needle out, putting a little tweak on the insertion, placing the back in the nasal passage, piercing is complete. Applying a drape sheet to the upper portion of the face, he braces the tissue with his thumb and forefinger. With the back of the needle, he makes a needle indentation. Bracing the tissue on the inside and keeping the nostril parallel at a nice 45-degree angle, having plenty of room to receive the needle. When he's assured of the angle, he pierces. Inserting jewelry already bent into the L, he pushes the sharp out of the piercing with the jewelry. Final adjustments are made, and piercing is complete. A drape sheet is applied. He then checks bendability and thickness while making needle indentation. Bracing the tissue and applying the appropriate angle with the needle, piercing is then done. The L-bent nostril screw is inserted. Final adjustments are made. Piercing is complete. If you tilt your head back slightly right there, just at a perfect 90, that's awesome. All I'm doing now is I'm going to custom shape this piece of jewelry to fit your nose in particular. I can tell that it's about 1/4 of an inch thick, so maybe 5/16 to accommodate for the swelling. I can see the angle I'm going to pierce it at. Just make sure that it's going to be just right. The angle isn't going to be hitting your septum or too far back in your nasal passage. So all I need from you, just to relax, give me a big, huge, deep breath in when I ask, and a nice, long, slow exhale, okay? Grabbing the inside of the nostril gives your more fold. Bracing the tissue on the inside. Alright, give me a deep breath in and out. That was it.